all right, guys, let's knock this out. Got stuff to do.
Two sort of days off or whatever.
It's nice. It's great. Great. Tucson did well. Tucson provided some good weather, and yeah, it was good to kind of recharge a little bit.
It said after the Baylor game that it was about the response and the energy for that game, and you seemed pleased with it. But how do you then build off that now that you have this extended break?
Do it again. I mean, it's not complicated. I mean, you know, this time of year, you know, every game's going to be, you know, competitive, and if you think you're going to show up and just go through the motions and be successful, you know, you're delusional. So. Yeah, we need to make sure every time we take the court that we're serving the game the way it should be served, and that's with effort, energy, intelligence, you know, all that stuff. So, you know, I mean, just to me those are the ingredients that I'm looking for right now.
Tommy, obviously Igor Devin is a very highly thought after prospect. What did you guys see from him? What was the plan to try to defend him first time around? And
well, I mean, he's very talented, you know, young player. Obviously, he's got a great future ahead of him, and you know, he's getting a great opportunity there to play with the ball in his hands a lot, and you know, he's having success. So you know, we know he presents a lot of challenges, you know, but those are challenges I think we're up for.
Obviously, you had your team's attention before, but are things a little easier when you see BYU and what they did to Kansas, and you can kind of point to that?
I mean, you know, we haven't really even talked about that yet. I mean, I hope our guys are paying attention, but you know, the game at BYU, I mean, it's a little misleading. You know, we kind of, it's one of those games. It's very even throughout. You know, with like, I don't know, 8 minutes to go or something, we kind of made a run at the right time, and you know, and you know, they tried to come back and missed some of the shots, and you know, we were able to kind of, you know, win at the end comfortably. But you know, it wasn't like it was from the tip. It was domination. So we know it's going to be an evenly matched game, and I also know, you know, I've played against BYU a lot. I know there's some character in that program, and there's going to be a response, and you know, they're going to come down here, you know, with the mindset of getting a win, and so we're going to have to approach it the same way.
I mean, when you play 3 straight home games against ranked teams, Iowa State, Houston, Texas Tech, and now you've got an unranked BYU team coming in here, do you have to, you know, tell the players to guard against the letdown of the
No, that easy.
What did you make of the BYU-Kansas game? I mean, it seems like nationally the perspective is Kansas is slipping, et cetera, but you just went up to BYU.
I mean, listen, I mean, BYU played great, Kansas didn't. I mean, when it was impressive, you know, there's, you know, no reason for me to draw any opinions on Kansas because we don't play them for a few weeks. But BYU looked great. You know, they had their way with them every which way, and so obviously they're going to be feeling really good about themselves, you know, coming down here.
Anything jump out at you defensively maybe with them, or anything jump out that looked different when you watched that game versus when you guys played them?
I mean, everything they did in the BYU in the Kansas game worked. That's what stuck out to me. You know, their defensive game plan worked. You know, their offensive execution worked, you know, and it's not very often you go into a game, you know, especially against a great opponent where, you know, everything you do works. So obviously, you know, they had a great game plan that their staff put together, and their players, you know, executed it almost to perfection. So that tells me you have a team that's, you know, playing with a lot of belief, you know, and a lot of confidence.
Is it tougher to use the 2 bigs against a team that pick and rolls as much as BYU would?
No.
Does that just put extra pressure on the bigs to be able to switch?
I mean, listen, there's defensive coverages, and you know, if it's something you don't like, something that works, you sub. You know what I mean? So you don't make too big of a deal out of it, and you know, we feel like we're growing defensively as a team, and you know, you know, you're going to be in situations. You know, the game of basketball, you don't pitch shutouts. You know, at least I have never pitched one. So, you know, the other team's going to score. They're going to have some success. You know, you're going to try something that's not going to work, but then you come back and you try it again, and maybe it does work. So, you know, we're going to hang with it. You know, I like individually some of the gains we're making defensively. I like, you know, the cohesiveness we've been playing with for the most part on the defensive end. So, you know, I don't really see, you know, because you have 2 bigs out there, it's more difficult in your pick and roll coverage than having 1 big.
A difference in teams' approach, this, not necessarily yours, but this time of season with so few regular season games, teams fighting to get into the tournament. Is there like a increase in intensity? Do you notice a difference? Or?
You know, I mean, I guess that's hard, you know, for me to, you know, to say. I mean, I do think just, you know, just from my experience in college basketball, this time of year, you know, you're starting to see how the standings may look. And so certain teams are making pushes, you know, to try to improve their opportunities for the postseason. And so what that does, you know, sometimes teams can play with a certain desperation that energizes them. And, you know, and you know, we, you know, have had to play with that desperation for quite a while because, you know, obviously we didn't get off to a start we would have hoped to. And I think that desperation served us well. I think that when we're at our best, it's part of our DNA, and so, you know, there's no reason for us to let our guards down and think we've arrived, because we haven't. So, you know, I would just say that, you know, the desperation, you know, element you can throw into teams' approach can maybe impact the effort and energy they play with on any given night. So, and you kind of start seeing that in mid-February.
BYU because they're on the bubble maybe at this point?
I mean, I don't know if they're in the bubble or not. That's for the experts to decide and them to figure out. I mean, they're a good team to me that's coming in here that's capable of winning in McKale. You know, so you know, we gotta treat that with respect. And you know, I don't know if they're playing with desperation or not. I mean, they played great last game. They haven't lost since we played them last. You know, so which, you know, was what, 3 or 4 games ago. So, you know, obviously they're playing really well. I guess I did lose at Cincinnati. My fault. You know, I don't want to misspeak, but they're on a little winning streak right now.
You've got a team that shoots 33s and different guys that shoot those threes. How much of it is we're going to focus Saunders or one of the other top shooters versus trying to, we're okay with this guy if we take it?
Well, I mean, I think you have to have a understanding of their personnel and their strengths and weaknesses, and, you know, obviously, you know, any good defense is going to, you know, tilt their coverages to, you know, other teams' strengths. So yeah, you want to have awareness. You know, you don't want you know their 2 best shooters just shooting a bunch of uncontested threes. I mean, that's a formula for disaster. So, you know, we got to do a great job on them individually, but at the same point, you know, you can't lose your defensive integrity. And now the paint's wide open and they're getting a bunch of layups. You know, there's always just there's a little balance there and a little bit of a give and take, and you know, that's what makes you know defense hard. You know, you make choices, but, you know, sometimes you make a choice here and you give up something there. And so you just have to figure that stuff out.
You've been in this situation a couple times this season where you're going up against teams that are on a little bit of a win streak. What are the key factors into going into a game like that and stopping the hot streak for them? Well,
every game starts out 0-0, last time I checked. That's it. 0-0 mentality. 0-0 approach, possession by possession. And don't make it any more than that. You know, just because, you know, they played good against Kansas doesn't mean they start plus 10 in this game. You know, obviously they feel good about themselves, which, you know, is a positive thing for them. But you just really approach it with a 0-0 mentality. You create a plan. You do your best to execute the plan, and then you see how it plays out over the course of the game, and then you can make some adjustments. So, you know, I mean, we're not approaching it any different way because they've won a few games in a row than if they had lost a few games in a row.
You mentioned the looking at the standings. I mean, you're famously you don't like to look forward too much, you say, but you have talked. I think you talked about that a little bit last night. You looked at the standings and you're talking about the potential buys in the tournament. How do you strike that balance? Because
here's how I look at the standings. Okay, everyone's going to play one game in the next couple of days. How does it look after one game? And then I look at the next time, how is it going to look after the second game? You know what I mean? I don't look 4 or 5 games ahead and say, well, you know, they're playing here, and, you know, that could be a tough game. They could go 2-3, and we could go 4. And, you know what I mean? My mind would explode. So I literally keep it simple, and I just want to know where we're at. And right now, we're in the top 4. Obviously, there's advantages to staying in the top 4. And the best way for us to stay in the top 4 that I know of is for us to win on Saturday. So that's what I mean when I look at the standings.
I mean, like half the time if I'll ask you, or any of us will ask you about some kind of situation down the road, you'll say, I'm not going there or whatever. But
half the time? So I'm softening? So 50% of the time I am telling you, like, I better sharpen up, Bruce. You've got me. Bruce, you're wearing me out. I better sharpen up. I better get that to 99% of the time.
Well, this would be one of those times where you kind of have to. So you're obviously not looking at the matchup, but just the general concept of you could possibly get to Thursday with buys. That general concept is something you're thinking about, and the guys are.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I also know that the best way for us to get there is win Saturday, and then win or lose on Saturday, we'll figure out the next step, and it's on Wednesday, right? I just heard we played on Wednesday next week, so I'll look at that and figure it out.
Philosophy in terms of how you want your bigs guarding the pick and roll change, whether it's the guard is a hot shooter, three-point shooter versus more of a driver?
I mean, that's a question we could take a lot of directions. I mean, it could change based on the big, it could change it based on the spacing, it could change based on the guard. I mean, there's lots of, elements, that kind of where you can decide how you want to tilt your coverages. So, yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I think all those things are in play. And when you're deciding how you want to guard the ball screen, defensively, and then the next thing is you have to say is, well, what are our base ways of guarding the ball screen? Well, we guard the ball screen generally these ways, and because this time of year, can you come and say, well, we've never done that way, so let's try that way. That might not be good. So you got to kind of stick to your strengths and what your team's comfortable with as well, and so yeah, there's a little bit of a give and take.
You just in terms of what happened with Cryer last Saturday, how did you evaluate that? Because it looked like your big sagged off there.
Well, listen, there was two scenarios there, and one of them, we had a player go for a steal. He didn't get it. It kind of caused a little, some down the line switching. So Tobey ends up switched on Cryer, and Tobey needs to know when he switched on Cryer, he's got to guard him. He's their best shooter. It's not complicated. That's a figure it out moment. Like, that shouldn't take a lot of coaching, and he was too far off in help, and he got an open three. That was the first one. The second one, we have a good defensive possession. We get down to the end. Carter's in a coverage. His guy sets a ball screen on Cryer. Cryer dribbles, with his left hand to the top of the key, and it's like 4-3 on the shot clock. I mean, Carter needs to be up. Whether he's up and you're in what some teams would say, at the level of the screen and you're not switching, or you're switching, you need to be up. Like, I mean, this is basketball 101. And we missed those two coverages, and that really hurt our chances to win the game. So we got to be better in those areas.
After last game, you said it wasn't definitive, the starting lineup, that you would do it again. Can you give any insight into?
I mean, I honestly haven't thought about it much since. I mean, it's a lineup I like playing, so we'll see how practice goes today, and give it a go. I mean, there was no promotion demotion. It was just you're looking sometimes for different ways to figure out your rotation, and if you want to try a group of guys to play together, the best way to do that in the course of a game sometimes is start them, because if you don't start them, there's so many little factors that play into a game. Could be a foul, could be could be a matchup, could be fatigue. So you're like, man, I really wanted to play this lineup, but because of this reason, I didn't feel comfortable doing it in the game. So I was just like, well, I really want to play that lineup, so maybe the best thing I can do is look to start it. And it really wasn't any more complicated than that.
Does that make this year a little more unique than the previous three because of you've had more lineup changes? I know some of them have been injury, but you hadn't really made those before this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to box myself in and say, hey, I pick a starting lineup on December 1st and I'm going to ride with it the rest of the year. I mean, I think you got to react accordingly to what you think is best for your team over the course of a season. And there is a great certainty in having the same starting lineup every day, if that makes sense for your team. I've just felt like these adjustments have been, something I wanted to try and felt like it could be a positive thing for our team, and that's why we did it.
BYU people want to be asked, what do you remember about coaching against Jimmer?
I mean, he's a really good player. He lit us up just like he lit Arizona up, so heck of a player. Good 3-on-3 player now, too.
You mentioned what's the key with Trey in this situation, whether or not he stays maybe in this bench, because he's been a starter his whole career too. If you do continue with this, does that add another element to get more out of him that he's also got to adjust to off the bench?
Play good. I mean, Trey just needs to play better. He knows that, and it doesn't need to be complicated, and he's right on the cusp of doing that. And I think it's a great thing for, players to come off the bench at some point. You know why? Because if you're going to play basketball for a long time at a high level, eventually you're going to come off the bench at some point. And why not get good at it? I mean, to me, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's part of the game. And, unfortunately, you can't start 7 players. So you start 5. And hopefully you have 7, 8 guys that are vying for those 5 spots. To me, that's when you have a program. And that's what we're striving to do.
I just wonder, like, if he, confidence-wise, if could make a difference. I remember he had Seth Henderson a couple of years ago or whatever, where he just seemed to feel more comfortable as a starter. Is Trey got a different mentality where you think maybe he could do it?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. I mean, listen, I like Trey in the game. I feel good when he's on the floor. Like I said, there's no demotion attached to this. This is a deal where I'm looking at, how do I rotate our players better? How do I play this certain lineup that I want to play that's been hard to get to in these games? And that was all the decision stemmed from.
You said a couple of weeks ago that you really want Deli to be a catch and shooter. That's his primary deal, but he has been very good at some aggressiveness to the basket in recent games. Are you okay when there's opportunity for him to do that?
As long as he's building his game off his catch and shoot, I'm okay. But the moment he's making catch and shoot his plan B, I'm not as okay. It's that simple. And Deli is figuring out, over the course of this year, what he needs to do to be a successful player at this level. And, there's been some growing pains for sure. I really liked what we got from him the last 2 games. And I felt good about that. So hopefully he can continue in that direction, because I know this, when he shoots the ball from 3 and his feet are ready early, I feel pretty good.
Last question.
With KJ and the little tweak to his wrist, he's been wearing the band, anything affecting his game or shot or anything?
I mean, listen, he's played really well. I mean, so based on his performance, I don't see anything. I mean, that would be a question for the training room. I don't get in J-Rock's business too much. If he tells me a guy can practice, he can practice. If he can tell me a guy can't practice, he doesn't practice. And I don't go there and meddle or do any of that stuff, because we got a great training staff. We got a great medical staff.
Thanks, Coach.
You guys have a good one.